That night, she waved goodbye for the last time. No one knew.
It was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. Clara smiled under the fairy lights, kissed her new husband, and waved goodnight to her neighbors. But by morning, she was gone. No note, no witnesses, no signs of struggle, just an empty bed and a wedding dress left behind. People say she ran away, others whisper she was taken. But one thing was certain: no one disappears without a trace, unless someone planned it that way. A detective finds scratch marks under the floor, a hidden basement behind a wall, and a camera still recording. And when a mirror starts reflecting what shouldn't be there, the truth behind Clara's wedding night begins to surface. What really happened after the music stopped? And why did her new husband suddenly vanish too? This is the story of a bride who vanished on her wedding night and the nightmare that followed.
Before we dive deeper into tonight's mystery, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Past Portal Channel, where every story opens a door to the unknown. Your support keeps these untold tales alive and helps us reach more minds that love the strange, the chilling, and the unforgettable. May this story bring you reflection, wonder, and maybe a little courage to face the shadows around you. And to those of you who've already liked, shared, commented, and subscribed, thank you. Your voice in the comments, your curiosity, your presence, it means everything to us. The night was warm, wrapped in golden string lights that blinked above the backyard like stars too close to touch. Clara stood in her flowing white dress, laughing gently while greeting neighbors with champagne still fizzing in their glasses. Her smile lingered on everyone she hugged, glowing as much as the lanterns swaying between trees. The backyard of their newly bought house had transformed into something out of a dream, and everyone on the block was invited. Daniel, her new husband, held her hand with a quiet kind of pride. Their wedding was small, intimate, and perfect. No loud speeches, just soft jazz from the radio and the scent of roses clinging to the night air. As guests began to leave, the mood shifted from celebration to quiet joy. Clara helped an elderly neighbor down the porch steps, waved to the children still chasing bubbles in the front yard, and kissed a friend goodbye under the wooden arch they had built themselves. She turned back toward the house one last time, her fingers brushing the veil now gathered at her side. Her white shoes made no sound on the stone path. The porch light flickered just once, briefly casting her shadow against the curtains. Then the door closed. A few minutes later, the music inside faded out, and with it, the night seemed to exhale, as if releasing her from the world entirely. By the time the sun returned and neighbors stepped out for their usual Sunday routines, something felt incomplete. A delivery man knocked, but no one answered. A neighbor's dog barked toward the house, tail rigid with unease. The wedding decorations were still up, though now wilted under the daylight. Daniel was nowhere in sight. Clara didn't appear to water her plants or wave from the kitchen window like she always did. It was as if the house had swallowed its own heartbeat, and it would only take a few more hours before someone finally knocked and found a silence too sharp to ignore. Inside the quiet house, Daniel sat alone on the edge of the bed, his eyes red but dry, fixed on nothing in particular. The morning light seeped through the curtains, but it did not warm him. Clara's dress hung neatly on the back of a chair. Her phone rested on the nightstand, still charged. Makeup brushes were lined up beside a small bouquet of lavender, untouched. Her shoes were placed under the dresser as if she had taken them off gently. The bedroom door was locked from the inside when their neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, finally found the courage to step in with a spare key she kept for emergencies. When she entered,
Daniel turned to her slowly and whispered the words that would ripple through the neighborhood like a curse. "She's gone." There were no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. Every room looked like it had been carefully prepared to host a future, not hide a secret. The kitchen was spotless, the dishes done. The only unusual thing was the untouched breakfast tray on the counter. 2 plates, 2 glasses of orange juice, and toast growing cold under a white cloth. It was as if the day had begun with good intentions before something invisible erased half of it. The front door was still locked. The windows were shut, all keys accounted for. It didn't make sense. Clara had simply ceased to exist between the moment she stepped inside and the moment daylight returned. By evening, the whispers began. Neighbors gathered in pairs near fences and on porches, piecing together their own versions of what could have happened. Some thought Clara had cold feet and run away. Others suspected Daniel, though many had seen him that night smiling, dancing, laughing beside her. Nothing about him screamed danger. But silence itself can carry a weight too heavy for truth. The police arrived, made notes, asked questions. A report was filed, flyers were printed, but no one said out loud what they all feared in secret, that the woman who walked into her house in a wedding gown was gone, and no one, not even her husband, could explain why. Detective Ava Layton arrived 2 days later, wearing plain clothes and a stare that had seen too many puzzles that refused to solve themselves. She moved through the house slowly, notepad in hand, her footsteps deliberate. The rooms were exactly as described, calm, untouched, too perfect. Yet her eyes caught what others had missed. In the bedroom, beneath the thick braided rug, the floorboards didn't lie flat. She crouched, peeled back the edges, and ran her fingers over faint grooves carved into the wood. They were narrow, uneven, and desperate, like someone had clawed at the floor from above or below. Daniel watched from the hallway as Ava worked. His hands trembled when he lit a cigarette, even though the lighter barely sparked. He wouldn't leave, he muttered, as if repeating it could rebuild her presence. Ava didn't answer. She pulled out a thin metal tool and pressed gently at the floorboard seams. One gave way with a muted click. Underneath was nothing but dust and a single pearl. Off-white, scuffed, and unmistakably part of the earrings Clara had worn that night. There was no blood, no hair, no signs of a body dragged or hidden, just that one piece resting in silence as if it had been placed there intentionally. The discovery unsettled everyone, not because it was proof of a crime, but because it was proof of something. Something had happened between the hours of celebration and mourning. Ava continued examining the house, tapping along the walls, listening to the hollow echoes behind them. In the hallway, near a faded family photo, she paused. A mirror hung opposite the frame, clean and ordinary. Yet as she passed it, Ava saw something strange. A flicker, too quick to be her own reflection. She stepped back and stared, waiting. Nothing moved. The mirror stared back blankly. But in that second of doubt, a thought lodged itself deep in her spine. Maybe Clara never left this house at all. The following evening, a frantic knock echoed through Ava's temporary lodging at the edge of town. It was Mrs. Alvarez, a soft-spoken widow who lived 2 houses down from the missing bride. Her hands trembled as she clutched a knitted shawl, eyes wide with fear. "She was there!" she whispered, her voice cracking. "In the mirror! Just standing there, looking at me!" Ava followed her without asking more, and once inside the old woman's hallway, the detective's eyes fell on the same mirror Mrs. Alvarez had described. Simple, oval, clean, but the air around it felt oddly still, as if holding its breath. Ava approached slowly, inspecting every edge. She touched the frame, then the glass. Cold. Her breath left a thin fog on the surface. As it faded, a shape began to form behind her reflection, soft, white, unmistakably feminine. Ava turned fast, but the hallway was empty. When she looked back, the mirror was clear again. No woman, no shape. But a faint smear of something pale remained at the center of the glass, as though someone had pressed their forehead against it from the inside. Ava ran her finger across it, and a chill traveled up her arm. That night, she took the mirror off the wall. On its back, written in fading marker, was a single word: below. The message ignited a new urgency in Ava's steps. She returned to Clara's house just before dawn. Alone, she scoured every inch of the property. In the garage, past paint cans and forgotten boxes, she noticed a panel behind the furnace, painted the same color as the wall, but poorly fitted. Pulling it free revealed a narrow opening, too dark to see into. She retrieved her flashlight. A stairwell descended into silence, coated in dust. The air smelled old and damp. She hesitated for just a second, then stepped down into the dark. With every creak of the wooden steps, the air grew colder, and the faint sound of something dripping echoed below, as if the house had a heartbeat no one had ever heard before. The hidden basement was no larger than a storage room, with concrete walls and a single flickering bulb swinging overhead. The dust was thick, undisturbed but not untouched. Along the far wall, chains hung like dead vines, some with cloth fibers still caught in their rusted loops. A wedding veil lay crumpled near the corner, stained with something dark and dry. Ava moved through the space slowly, the beam of her flashlight steady, her breath sharp in the cold air. Then she saw it. A small camera mounted in the corner, still connected to a blinking recorder. The timestamp read exactly 2 hours after the last guest had left the wedding. She played the footage with gloved fingers, watching Clara descend the narrow stairs, laughing nervously, still in her dress. Daniel followed behind, speaking softly. There was no struggle, no fear. He wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. She looked happy, like she trusted him. Then the moment shifted. Daniel paused near the top of the stairs. Clara turned, confused. He said something inaudible, and then without warning, he stepped back and closed the hidden door. The recording continued for a full 20 minutes as Clara knocked gently, then louder, calling his name. Eventually, she sat down against the wall, hugging her knees. The light began to flicker. Then, the video ended. Ava copied the footage and returned upstairs. Daniel was gone. His phone disconnected, his car missing. A search of his identity revealed inconsistencies, a trail of altered records, changed names, and sealed marriage licenses. This wasn't his first wedding. In another state, under another name, another bride had vanished the same way. Clara was just the only one whose ceremony had witnesses. The basement was sealed off as evidence. The neighbors stood in silence as officers marked the ground. Ava didn't speak. She watched the front door as if expecting it to open. It never did. The house stood still again, but it no longer felt quiet. It felt aware.
The headlines spread fast: a charming husband, a vanished bride, a hidden room beneath a picture-perfect home. Daniel's face was broadcast everywhere, but he remained invisible, slipping through cities like mist. In the weeks that followed, Clara's image, smiling in her gown, appeared on lampposts, online forums, and late-night news. But no body was ever found, no voice heard. The house was sold quietly, but decorations long removed. And yet, every new tenant reported the same thing: a coldness in the hall, a flicker in the mirror, footsteps at midnight when no one else was home. Some refused to stay. Others just stopped speaking of it entirely.
Ava, meanwhile, carried the case with her long after the files were stamped and shelved. She kept the pearl earring in her coat pocket, a reminder that not every question ends with an answer. Sometimes the silence speaks louder. She revisited the neighborhood once, months later, and stood in front of the house without going inside. Curtains were drawn, the wind rattled the porch swing. A child across the street stared from behind a curtain, then quickly disappeared. Ava didn't knock. She didn't need to. The story was no longer just a case. It had become something else, part of the street, part of the ground beneath it. On certain nights, when the fog presses low and the moon is soft, neighbors claim they still see her. A woman in white, walking slowly through the garden that once held laughter and vows. She never looks at anyone, she never speaks. She simply moves toward the front steps and vanishes into the door that never opens. The new owners stopped asking questions. Mirrors are now covered in cloth. And as someone knocks at midnight, no one answers. Because in this neighborhood, the past doesn't rest. It watches, remembers, and waits for another story to begin.
Sometimes the people closest to us carry the deepest shadows. A smile can hide silence. A promise can mask danger. And a peaceful home can hold secrets too heavy for its walls. What happened to Clara may seem distant, like something from a story too strange to be true. But in truth, many disappear long before they are gone, forgotten by those who stopped listening, lost in the corners of everyday life. Let this story be a reminder to look deeper. Pay attention to what feels off, even when everything looks perfect. Because in the quiet moments between trust and doubt, a single choice can change everything. Protect the people you love, and never ignore the voice that tells you something is not right. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, gave you chills, or made you think, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Your support helps Past Portal continue to uncover more stories that echo beyond the surface.